Makaila, image, Matatuhi, a DPSN video blog.
My name is Makaila, and I'm a bit obsessed with maps at the moment.
What do you do with print?
So I'm a letterpress printer, so that means that I use type that's little bits of metal with letters on it and put them all together and use that to print. And when you're doing that with a whole lot of really small letters, you're pulling that out of a case. It's a little bit like a computer keyboard. You know where to find your letters.
What's the New Zealand history?
The first things ever printed here were printed in Māori. Anything that was printed before then in English was printed in Australia or Britain and brought over. William Yeat was the very first printer in New Zealand, but he wasn't actually trained in printing and he was really shit. So they got rid of him and they sent a guy called William Colenso. When he arrived at the end of 1834, he had a press and he had all the type, but practically everything else was missing. So what he ended up doing was designing a typecase. And I think he basically looked at it and went, well, the reason I'm here is to print in Māori. I don't need all these other letters that aren't in the Māori language. So he designed a case around the Māori alphabet.
What about now?
When I came to look at Colenso's typecases to create something that we could use today, I knew that it was the best idea to stick with the basis of what we already used in the museum. It was pointless trying to reinvent the wheel. So it was more a case of combining what Colenso had done and what the New Zealand Museum letterpress case looks like already. Then the other big difference is the fact that we now use macrons. So that meant that there needed to be extra spots for the macrons, and given that I've just taken out all of those letters like S's and B's that aren't in Māori, I had heaps of space to do that. And the really great thing for me for that was the fact that in English, P's and K's are not especially common, but in Māori they're really common, so I could put them in big boxes. I thought that it was really important to make sure that this typecase could be used for all dialects, and the way that I have been taught Māori is a preference for using the macrons. But you know, in the Waikato, for example, they tend not to, so I wanted both to be available.
What will you print?
The project we're working on at the moment is a booklet for Māori Language Week, which is really cool. And the most exciting thing about it, actually, for me, was the fact that it wasn't my idea to make. It was my team leaders. And I work with a lot of old white men in the print shop. Not exclusively, but mostly. And so their attitudes towards what I'm doing most of the time has just been a bit, what are you doing this for? And as I've continued to work on it, and I have shown how important it is to New Zealand's history, and the fact that we're sort of reinvigorating that by doing it in a new way, and a way that we can continue to do it, they've started to see how useful that is. For my team leader to come to me and say, hey, let's put together a booklet for Māori Language Week, that was a pretty big moment for me in the print shop to kind of go, yeah, there's an attitude change happening here.
What are you proud of?
One of the things I think that has been the most rewarding about creating this new typecase is that I have people thinking about Māori writing more than they would have. And certainly a big section of people who would never have considered thinking about it, who are now thinking about it. And removing that idea that it's a stagnant language, because it really isn't. It's alive. And to look at what Colenso did back then and compare to how we think about language now is a really great way of seeing those differences. I've had a lot of people ask me, why have you learnt Te Reo Māori? And the easy answer is because it's the language of New Zealand. But there are other reasons as well. And the two main ones for me are we all need to do our job in supporting Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And given that my interest is language in general, it seems so obvious that I should be supporting the language as best I can. The more I learn, the more I share to other Pākehā. And the more we can get Te Reo Māori into our daily lives, it's going to improve Te Reo Māori and its revitalisation. Like, the more it's going to be normal for it to be a compulsory subject at school. And so it's just helping that along. And anything I can do to support that, and doing this typecase is part of that. It's another tool to support the revitalisation of Māori. And the other side of it is poetry. I want to be able to support and, more importantly, read poetry by New Zealand writers. And to do that, you need Māori.